Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. I am Philip Edward Alexander. Welcome to Plain Talk. The Plain Talk is a feature presentation of the Progressive Empowerment Party, of which I am the political leader. I am joined tonight for part two of a conversation on the economy by Ved Siriram. He is a former corporate account manager at Scotiabank, corporate officer, and a former managing director of Citicorp Merchant Bank, a former senator and financial consultant. Good evening, Bade.
Good evening, Philip. Good evening to audience.
Trust that you had a nice and restful day today.
That is true. That is true. With the lockdown, there's very little else to do. You can't buy paint and you can't buy barbecue pits again.
I'm a barbecue. It's against the law.
It's
Just
against the law.
doubles the barbecues against now. I don't know. Bade, I want to ask you a couple of quick questions
Sure.
before we get to the rest of the show, right? Were you a member of the Bankers Association when you were at Scotia or at Citicorp?
Me personally, because remember the Bankers Association, yes, Scotiabank was part of that association, and usually the managing director will be part of that executive.
As the managing director of Citicorp, were you a member of the Bankers Association?
No, no.
Citicorp was not
No,
a part of Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago.
no, because the structure of Citibank in Trinidad, you have Citibank Trinidad and Tobago Limited, which manage the corporate accounts and so on, and then you had another section, Citicorp Merchant Bank, and Citicorp Merchant Bank was looked almost like a division and not necessarily a independent legal entity, although in fact it was.
So it was a financial institution under the terms that govern financial institutions and banks in Trinidad and Tobago, but it was not governed by the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, not it was not represented there.
Why?
It was represented.
Why?
It's one of those loose arrangements over the years that the front for Citibank operations in Trinidad was always Citibank Trinidad and Tobago Limited. So you will have the managing director of that bank representing Citibank in most of the external organizations and so on. So I can't give you an answer why or why not, but those are the facts that I know.
I want to ask
But
you, what?
yeah,
Go ahead.
no, I'll be interested to know because what would have prompted that particular question?
It's a series of questions that building one on top of the other, and I need to get some information, right? What are the
Sure.
terms, the overriding terms? I don't need details, but
No.
a bank operating in Trinidad and Tobago operates under a license, yes?
Yes.
Are you aware of the overarching details of that license? Terms and
Um,
conditions.
to some extent, because they will have the kinds of products and services you can deal with. For example, a merchant bank could not take deposits less than 1 year. That's just an example. We could
Right.
not run checking accounts. We could not run checking accounts. So that way
That's
we differ, differ
you're
to
talking
the.
as
I'm talking about the merchant bank,
physical
Citicorp
merchant.
Merchant Bank. Yes,
Who do
yes.
banks in Trinidad and Tobago answer to?
Depending on the types of transaction, for example, um, you would answer it depends on the product. Say, for example, if you're dealing in repos, you will answer to the SEC. If you're dealing in bond transactions and so on, you'll answer to the SEC. Um, and however, the central bank they will have a final say on everything. They could investigate any aspect of your operations.
So the point I'm trying to get at is who
Mhm.
negotiates, issues, and manages the operating license of a bank, Trinidad.
Sorry, when you say who? Or the central
What
bank?
of state? Is it the central bank governor? Is it the central bank? Is it the minister of finance? Is it some other organization? Who does a
No,
bank negotiate with and gets a license through? Who?
your first contact and approval is from the central bank. Now, to do your bond transactions and so on, you also require the Securities and Exchange Commission approval to get involved.
Who signs the
Now,
license?
a bond transaction, besides the license, yes. To get
No, no,
involved in repo,
the
sorry,
license. Who signs the license?
the central
Who?
bank.
Central bank governor.
Yeah, yeah. Whether it's the
So for,
governor or the legal person, I don't recall.
but
But
for
you
all
remember
intents,
we had,
mhm.
uh-huh,
For all intents
for
and
all,
purposes, the license is between Republic Bank and the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. Yes,
yes, yes, yes, yes.
that gives Republic Bank or any bank the ability to operate as a bank in Trinidad and Tobago. Yes,
As a commercial bank, yes.
and Central Bank sets the terms and conditions under the Banking Regulations Act.
That's correct. To my knowledge, yes.
When you were a senior officer at both Scotia and Citicorp, did you at
Hmm.
any time encounter any accounts that you thought the income did not line up with the amount of money that was supposed to be generated by the business or the person operating that account?
I don't recall. Maybe in Scotiabank, there were some instances where the income of clients were questioned, but it was not in our branch. I don't recall in our branch at all. And even so, in 1980s, it was not something under the radar.
What you
But I
mean?
know, well, it was not something that we were made so conscious of, except there was at one point that particular matter blew up with regards to drugs money and Scotiabank and in Mexico. And then we became more aware of it. But to my knowledge, not in Trinidad. It may have happened in the other branches, the smaller branches.
Scotiabank, Mexico. I don't understand. That one I don't know about. Tell me a little more about that.
It was a question of the drugs cartel dealing in cash to transfer a significant amount of money, and I think Scotiabank admitted to it and apologized and probably paid a fee as well.
So Scotiabank, Trinidad or Scotiabank,
No, no,
Mexico?
no, not Scotia Trinidad, not Scotia
Okay.
Trinidad.
Okay. I need to ask you a couple more of these questions. I'm trying to make a point here.
Yeah,
Were
sure,
you
sure.
aware of allegations of corrupt enrichment, white collar criminal activity, money laundering, and the proceeds of drug trafficking leveled against some that could be called elite in society, ministers, members of parliament, public office holders, and some of whom belong to a class now referred to as the 1%. Were you aware of any allegations of corrupt enrichment? That means contracts for kickbacks, white collar criminal activity. Well, I know you know what that means, money laundering as well, and the proceeds of drug trafficking leveled against some of these people. Were you aware of that while you were at either or both Scotia or Citicorp?
No, no. I can't recall any incident, and there was nothing brought up at any of the executive meetings or senior managers meeting. To my knowledge, no.
And in your
If you
years
want
as
to,
a hmm?
go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
go ahead.
Not asking my
No,
question. Say what you.
no, unless you have a specific
No, I don't.
incident.
Don't. No,
Yeah,
I don't. I don't. I want you to
no,
understand something. Prior
yeah,
after the spot drug report in Trinidad and Tobago, the only person with a public voice, the only politician that brings up the drug trade, drug trafficking, money laundering, the failure of the financial institutions to report drug and narco trafficking and money laundering, corrupt enrichment and kickback through their institutions is me. So I'm asking you as a senior banking officer, just in case you might have known. I have two
okay,
more questions.
okay,
I have two more
sure,
questions on this issue. In your
Sure.
years as a senior officer of two major banks, have any of your colleagues been victimized or fired for raising any issue with any law enforcement agency or persons or businesses where account activity did not line up with income or earnings?
No, no,
Not one bank officer, not a bank
not
manager, board
no,
member, nobody.
no, no issues came up where somebody was fired or so.
With as a senior officer, two major banks,
Hmm.
don't you find it strange that a country that has intercepted billions of dollars of cocaine here and who has
Hmm.
been named as a pipeline for billions of Mexican, Colombian, and Venezuelan cocaine cartel dollars and drugs through Trinidad to Europe, Canada, and the United States? Don't you find it strange that not one financial transaction in one of our financial institutions has ever been flagged or raised at any level?
No. There was some incidents of fraud which the newspapers covered it, but that was a more recent vintage. When I say recent, my goodness, 20 years have passed. Um, when the Sorry, not 20 years. This was when I was a director at FCB. The incidents at NGC when there was some collusion with a senior officer there and perhaps people in the bank. I don't know what was the final outcome, where monies were pilfered from NGC and transferred to places. I think three of the other countries, but that's about it. Um, but this was not what you're talking about. Um, I'm not denying it may have occurred, but everything would have been hushed to such an extent where that it was not brought to even. Remember, apart from being managing director of Citicorp Merchant Bank, I was probably at the third layer at Scotiabank.
Yeah, but you see, some money went missing in PriceSmart. A
Mm-hmm.
manager did. A
Mm-hmm.
manager was his name, his
Mm-hmm.
address, his occupation, and his face was plastered all over the newspaper.
Right.
Michael Moses, Ronald Moses, George Moses, all children of Miguel Moses, now deceased, who are the owners of Czar nightclub on the corner of Carlos Street and
Mm-hmm.
Ariapita Avenue. That
Mm-hmm.
bar was raided for drugs and prostitution, and
Mm-hmm.
the bar was named, but the owners were named as businessmen in Trinidad
Mm-hmm.
and Tobago. And that is not the first time that I have seen instances. A restaurant was raided in Trinidad and Tobago by SORT and the Commissioner of Police, and some underage Venezuelan girls were found to be living in a business owned by a Syrian businessman who owned a house in West Moorings, and he was named in the media as businessman. And I'm saying this again
Mm-hmm.
because I live in a country where if you're black or an Indian and you're poor and you get caught in something, your name, your address, and your shoe size could be plastered in the Guardian and the Express. But if you are engaged in major money laundering, drug trafficking activities, I am being sued by the chairman of Macal for asking the question of McEnany Allstons. If you did, I was not even of McEnany Allstons. I asked a question of the Financial Intelligence Unit about a guy named Dole Chady from Sealots who was subsequently killed in a shootout with police, who the Commissioner of Police himself said if he was a fisherman, he was fishing for goldfish. Mr. Man bought a multi-million-dollar vehicle and posted a picture on social media with the sales rep inside the Range Rover showroom owned by McEnany Allstons, and a lawyer from JD Saley and Company, Andre Rudder, representing McEnany Allstons, is questioning my right to ask of the financial, not even of Macal, again, of the Financial Intelligence Unit, if due diligence was done on that purchase. Because if a drug trafficker, gang leader like Dole Cheney could walk into Macau so bold, buy a multi-million-dollar car dripping in gold, and pose himself and the sales rep, and the Financial Intelligence Unit raise one flag. Tell me again,
Hmm.
Trinidad and
Was it?
Tobago, our entire bankers associate. This is a case that is going on right now, sir. Right now, because McEnany Alstons and the Sabga clan believe I do not have a right to ask a question of that transaction, but I absolutely believe that I do. And I'm saying to you again, after the Scott drug report in this country, where billions of dollars, where police officers have been named, officers of the courts have been named, involved in the most dubious of transactions, we've never had, I asked a former Prime Minister Basleo Pandey, why we never had a follow-up to the Scott drug report. This is a country where Justice Scott was commissioned to an inquiry drug trade in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm putting this to you for one reason. There are two people that deal with drug trafficking in Trinidad and Tobago: law enforcement and the financial institution. Those are the two paths by which Rudy Giuliani shut the mafia down in New York City. And that corrupted 65,000 police. We only have 6,000 police here. And Trinidad and Tobago needs to know that we're living in a country rotten to the very core, where this kind of activity and business takes place and not one flag is raised ever. How is that possible?
Well, the fact that it has happened means that it's possible. But let me sort of allay your suspicion. I want to reconfirm that nothing of that during my time during my banking career, did I come across such events. I could tell you. So therefore, it means to say, and I don't disagree with you because obviously it's happening. Obviously, it's happening, but it has been well concealed, and I think that your area of interest is of national importance, and I think your questions and so on are very valid, and but it has never been my area of interest. I focus on other forms of corruption and criminal activities by the banks, and which I myself has on many occasions exposed these transactions at the highest level. So,
You
it's not a
exposed
case of course I did. Of course I did. And those
when
matters
you
were
say
before the court.
there are matters
Sorry?
before the court. They became
Of
matters before
course,
the court.
I will give you all the, no, but they shut it down. They shut it down. I'll give you all the files if you, I'd be glad for assistance because Trinidad has a lot of money to get back from certain banks. I'll give it to
So
you.
keep
I've been
talking.
fighting, I've been fighting these things for 20 years. And the level of corruption, the kind of corruption that, and the transactions that the banks do vis-a-vis other clients, it's horrific. It's horrific. I came prepared to talk about diversification. So,
I know, I know, but I want to ask you one last question on this.
yeah. All right.
You say that it is horrific.
Yes.
What is the channel available to you by law as somebody trying to blow the whistle on it? What is the channel available to you by law to raise that issue? Commissioner of Police, Director of Public Prosecutions, who?
Yes, I raised it with the central bank. Last time, yesterday, I mentioned to you when that matter was one. uh, when that one particular matter was raised with the central bank, they were so callous and said they spoke to the bank and the bank told them everything is okay and therefore please keep quiet. Then I realized that these fellows are regulators, that they are not prepared to attend to the business of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. They are not prepared to protect our treasury. Listen, it's horrific. Let me tell you, it's horrific.
Then I want those files. I want to work with you on those files. I tell you this now publicly. I am committed to
Mhm.
assisting you. You still have interest in going forward with this. If not, I'd like you to make copies and turn it over to me, because one of my reasons for being in politics is to go back to 1962, September 1st, and examine every single transaction we have ever engaged in, find the racketeers, find the government ministers, the members of parliament, the public office holders in every avenue of public office, and to bring them all to justice. That is my goal, that is my role, that is what I am in politics. If you have the information that you say that you have, I would like to take a look at it. We could let that
This
be
is
a
not
wrap up. Mhm.
this is not a question. This is not a question. Let me close on this particular point of just $1,000 or $5,000. We are dealing with billions of dollars.
I'm
Billions.
aware. I'm
I
aware.
brought it to the, I brought it to the attention of the previous government. I brought it to the attention when Mr. Pandey was there. I brought it, and these are several transactions, not just one. Well, I've aged 20 years since I started this. So if younger bloods want to take it on, because it impacts on every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, every citizen, and we need to get back that money. And as you know, crime has no statute bar, so that can always be resurrected, always.
Well, actually, they made sure that corrupt enrichment does have a statute bar. But what I have found out
Well,
from a United
sorry,
States
sorry, corruption or
corrupt enrichment, they're very versed in
Mhm.
stealing. When they steal public funds, they steal legal fees too. But I have a team of people that I work with. I work with people from the Internal Affairs Unit of the New York City Police Department. I know people who are involved in the prosecutor's office. And I have been told that once we can prove that an ongoing conspiracy has occurred to keep the matter quiet, then it pierces the statute of limitation. But we stick up in there because I know that you came to talk about diversification. But the reason I want to talk to you about this is you can't full water in a sieve. You can't full water in a basket. You need a bucket. If a bucket full of holes, you're going to lose all your water, yes? And I'm making an analogy here.
Well,
Yes?
that is what has been happening. Our treasury, controlled by the Ministry of Finance, has been a feeding trough for many of these international banks and local banks as well. It's a feeding trough, and I'm not saying that they were the. I think it's a question of lack of intelligence and laziness on behalf of the people in the Ministry of Finance, and not necessarily as a as a conspirate as part of that conspiracy. That's my belief, and that is besides the point. The point is the crime has occurred, and let's get back the money. And Trinidad needs the money. I don't know if you remember Max from where it was Aruca. His saying
That's
was, "We need the money.
my
We
very
need
good
the
friend.
money now." Okay, we'll talk about that later.
Ped, I want to thank you for being so forthcoming on that issue. And you're not alone, eh? I know you might think that you're alone. There are a lot of people in Trinidad and Tobago that have a lot of information that's making the information available to me. And slowly but surely, people are waking up to the fact that the only political organization in this country willing to battle corruption, not only to stop it, but to go back and prosecute all those who were involved in it, be they prime ministers or otherwise, is the Progressive Empowerment Party. And I need to make this abundantly clear because we can't come on a show like this and talk about kumbaya. Let's all hold hands and go forward while we treading water up to our necks in a latrine.
I accept the analogy. You can't and you should not. Yeah, and this is where education is very important, and the question of values in life is also very, very important and recognized as well. I don't know if you saw, um, uh, was it Job, his saying on his deathbed. You recall that?
No, tell me.
Steve Jobs. Well, he
Steve Jobs.
said, "Look,
Yeah. So Steve Jobs. We
yeah,
can just talk about.
Steve Jobs, when no, on his deathbed, he did reveal universal truth. He said it doesn't matter what car you drive, whether it's 300,000 or 30,000, it takes you the same place. He said it doesn't matter what watch you wear, whether it's a Rolex or whether a $30 watch, it tells you the same time. So you see, at the end of the day, what is important is the values in your life and what you've contributed, and your relationships with your family and friends and society at large. And he was 50 something when he passed away, a multi-billionaire. So I don't know why we're fighting for for material wealth all the time when we all know that what how it will end, but we still grab onto it. I mean, it's pretty scary stuff, actually. I think we have a minimum wage. I think as a society we should also accept a maximum wage, because you see a lot of, um, I would call it, very mediocre characters in Trinidad and Tobago, walking around with pensions from three locations, walking around with large directorship salaries, and I'm wondering what are they doing to earn this money? And when they're in charge of these organizations, they're losing billions of dollars and they're being promoted. And we have to say, okay, let's have a maximum salary. We can't afford, society cannot afford to pay these scoundrels for that kind of money for messing up the system. So, I mean, that's just on the side. Those are my feelings. There should be a
No, no,
maximum
no.
wage.
You know, it's adding insult to injury to pay a
Mm.
pension to criminals who assisted in the corrupting of the country for kickbacks for themselves. There are people who cannot answer for, and I said this last night, there are people who cannot answer for what they own. Trinidadians are very, how to say this, we're very lazy. We think that I think get away with that. Let me move on. You know, we've
Mhm.
moved from periods of theft to 5 year periods of theft. So we defined Eric Williams with Sam P. Wallace and Pravat and Johnny O'Halloran and the rest. We defined Manning with Call the Heart and and the others that if you call their names is a defamation lawsuit. We define Pat Kamler with SIS and and the other kickbacks for legal briefs and all that bacchanal going on in the state. Right now, this government is looting this country in a way that those three I named cannot even compare. But they are professionals now. They've become so good at it. Before, you had to maybe try and find somebody corrupt in the public system to get through with what you're about to do. Now, everybody's sitting down with a clipboard waiting for you to put something on it. I don't know if licensing office could stand scrutiny. I don't know if the average public office could stand scrutiny. If you commission inquiries, and I want to tell Trinidadians this one thing, stop saying commissions of inquiries do not work. A commission of inquiry is a tool. A commission of inquiry's job is to bring you to a conclusion, provide you with advisement, evidence, or a way forward. From there, it is law enforcement and the Director of Public Prosecutions. If law enforcement and the Director of Public Prosecutions do not do what they're supposed to do with the conclusions of these inquiries, say that. But a commission of inquiry gets the job done. And if we commissioned inquiries into WASA, Tea and Tech, Town and Country, if we commissioned inquiries into the operation of the central bank, a lot of people will serve multiples of jail sentences in this country. Big, big people, the front pews of the church, the temple, and the mosque will be empty.
You know, there's a commissioner at the SEC in the US. He said brick and mortar does not commit crime. It is the individuals. And
Yeah.
since then, what they said, instead of, let's say, suing a financial institution, they also rope in the manager on a personal basis, the persons who were directly involved. Because what happens in Trinidad is you sue the government for malfeasance or wrong actions, and then the government takes your own money and fight you, and then they drag you on. The individuals at government who really ought to be responsible for it, they lose the election, they move on, and you're left now fighting the government, which your the party that you may have supported is now in power, and it's a mess, and the individuals have to become more responsible. What happens with many of the when you're a director, there's a clause that you build in that you are not personally responsible, and you get insurance to cover it. But that assumes that you acted in good faith and not out of negligence. If you are negligent, then you as an individual director is personally responsible. You cannot be negligent. If you do not know the business of running that particular organization and that particular business, if you don't, your first job as being appointed as a director is to spend time and understand the business. You cannot say you don't know, and you cannot now depend upon the insurance to bail you out for the wrong decisions that you make. And I think we need to understand this in greater detail, and to understand the individuals who actually make the decision. For example, the gentleman who was accused of what you call touching one of the secretaries or so. I don't know what is the extent of that touch, but I'm sorry, you take taxpayers' money and bail yourself out. All those things have to be investigated. I agree with you.
And the same
So that means
lawyer that that was representing Rowley was put in charge of one of the Petrotrin spin-off companies drawing public funds again. It's almost a
no.
joke. Sure, it's a joke.
Well, we must have clear. We already have clear laws in that. When I say clear laws, it is you have legal backing that it is wrong, but we have to specify it so that you can. So we have to go now in greater detail and say somebody that who has done work for you cannot be appointed as a director. To what extent do we go? And laid out very, very clear that you can look at page 10 on the book and say, okay, this is the law that you have broken. But then we are really children if we don't understand proper ethics and proper business conduct. But I'm saying there are laws to deal with it. The question is, who's the plaintiff and who's going to fund the plaintiff? That is the issue. Who's
Boss,
the plaintiff?
I drive through Bossier Village on a regular basis
Hmm.
and drive past three gas stations opposite Ellerslie Plaza. Well, it's two now. One became a Michelin tire dealer in Trinidad. But those three gas stations, because it is still the built-out gas station building that operates as this tire dealership. So you could tell it's a gas station that you're driving past. But they are 25, 30 feet away from each other. These three gas stations in Bossier Village was as a result of the speculation, lands, real estate speculation, and bribery from Johnny O'Halloran and Kenneth Tam. Johnny O'Halloran, when he was the PNM Minister of Land and Mines, Petroleum in Trinidad and Tobago. Remember all of this? Remember all of this? Johnny died a
Um,
multi. Johnny O'Halloran
Vaguely.
died a he left skyscrapers in Toronto, but with Trinidad and Tobago money. Again, the average person in Trinidad and Tobago doesn't understand why this country is a failed nation today, why it is so poor and broken, why we have nothing to show for it, why our education system and our public health is such crap, because the same thing is going on today, and we're washing corruption money in chocolate and corn curls and biscuit and sweet drink, and we're washing dirty money in hamburgers and fries. We're washing dirty money. We're corrupting the entire system. The Minister of Finance standing in the sacrosanct chamber of Parliament, the highest court in Trinidad and Tobago, to read a budget to funnel money to people corruptly enriching themselves and kicking back to government ministers. And this has been the legacy of Trinidad and Tobago for all of our 58 independent years.
But there's so many examples of that, and I think in the meantime, a little virus come and knock us off the cliff. And I'm telling you now that it's so obvious that a lot of money is going to be wasted. There's this commission. They're going to be funded. You have to put aside money for them. We are borrowing money to do that. We're getting some grant money. We're pushing it there. How it is not going to where we need the money. We need the money and get agriculture and so on going. In the meantime, we need the money to feed the persons who cannot put food on their table, and we have to set up a distribution a system very very quickly to get this done. I saw the Ministry of Public whatever, they put together a list of telephone numbers for people to call who need money, who need food.
You
How
also call them,
that
you
assumes
also
that everybody access to phones as well. That's what it assumes.
people send me the list of numbers. Let me call one. But this is called shock doctrine, you know. Hungry
Hmm.
bellies takes precedent. Roof leaking, place flooding, thing on fire takes precedent, so you forget that this same government shut down the Port Authority Board to facilitate theft designed as the Tobago Sea Bridge. Now, the people who need to move between Trinidad and Tobago, they can't care because their business and their livelihoods being ruined by the lack of a sea bridge. So you fire the superfast glacier. The superfast glacier, that was so much corruption that when it was supposed to leave the country on its last voyage, Trinidad even stole a voyage from the superfast glacier and sent the Coast Guard to make sure that the superfast glacier made one more trip. And they made the trip. And after they made the trip, they left Trinidad. They left things behind. We called them on the phone to tell them you're leaving stuff. They said, keep it. We don't ever want to see that country again. We've lost tens, if hundreds of millions of dollars in all types of shenanigans solving the problem that the government created just with the sea bridge. Just with the sea bridge. The architect who was involved in building central bank towers in Port of Spain told me, Mr. Alexander, the location of central bank towers is such a foolish location for a building of that nature that we had to drive piles 3 times the height of the building into the ground to find rock so that we could have built that building. And all of that cost money. 10 and 50 times the size, the value it should have cost to build that building.
Yeah, Philip, let me suggest something at this stage. We run out of time. We're running out of time for the diversification, but we'll continue discussion. But let me suggest something. We are not going to solve this problem if we don't change the politics a little bit. And let me explain what I mean. Our system is such that it gives the prime minister tremendous amount of power, tremendous, and we need to change it. And one way, the other major problem with our system is that if, for example, I'm in an area where I support a party that has a very small support number. Let me use Party A, and in my area, I support Party B, but I know Party A supporters are overwhelming. Then I'm discouraged to vote. In fact, even when I vote, my vote is not counted. So we need to have proportional representation at least at the Senate level. And I'll show you how that will work. Say, for example, your party, right? You now know that every vote that you get in Trinidad is going to count because we're going to count up that vote now. And once it's over 5%, you will get that percentage of representation at Senate level. Leave the 41 as it is now. Leave it now. Don't try to revamp everything, but we can make organic changes that improve the system. So you are encouraged as a party to go out an election year because you know even if you don't get representation at the 41 at the lower house, you gather 5% or 10% and you'll get your percentage seat at the Senate level. So it means to say it will encourage that if I vote in an area where my party always loses, I know my vote count. I will come out to vote. because it counts somewhere. So while the proportional representation has been bandied about for years, I'm saying we should all perhaps do a plebiscite or something and see if that is agreeable and write that into our constitution now. Because you could be working very, for example, look, you remember when um, the NAR, not the NAR, the other COP,
ONR,
when they
COP.
and ONR, they got more, perhaps more votes than the second party, but no seats. Okay, they don't get seats at the lower house, but they'll get the majority or the second majority seats at Senate. So you encourage now. We are stuck in a dilemma: is either UNC or PNM, and you don't have if you don't have a choice, that's it. And that's why every now and then a third party comes out and nearly makes it. They nearly make it, but they never do. So we need to advocate for a change, and I think any party that is going up for election, whether PNM, whether UNC, that puts that as part of their manifesto, I think everyone will want to vote for them. So that needs to change. That is one of the big problems that we have because there are no independent senators in Trinidad. Show me one independent senator. There's none. That's a farce. So I don't know why we're cultivating and nurturing such what I would call um, illusions in the administration of society. I don't see why we are. I think we have been independent for so many decades. By now, we should be able to be proud of ourselves, proud of our knowledge, and proud to make changes without looking to the metropole and without looking to North America, without looking to Washington, without looking to the World Bank, without looking to IMF. Just imagine at this stage, we wait on an IMF report to tell us how we are doing. You could explain that to me? We have all these bright economists in Trinidad and Tobago, and we don't know how we are doing. We are driving the car. We don't know how much mileage we are doing. We don't know how much gas in the tank. We have to wait on an IMF report, and then based on those reports, all the economists come out of the woodwork and start commenting. This is happening and that. We don't want to hear their comments if we are depending on IMF. But we should be able to tell ourselves long before how Trinidad and Tobago is going. How are we doing? Guys, what changes should we make? What changes should we make to the economy? And 40 years we've been discussing diversification. Nothing has happened. I'm sorry, we should surrender ourselves to be enslaved once more. If we are not proud of ourselves to be able to take control of our own destiny, then something is radically wrong. We are dependent upon conflicts made somewhere in America. The local guys say, no, we're making it here. You're just assembling it here. There's nothing we make here. And I'm very disappointed for the simple reason we have the capacity to think, but we don't think. Just imagine they're still using the debt to GDP ratio. GDP is a farce, so you have a numerator over a farcical denominator, and you're using that as what you call indicators to drive your car, to drive your economy. How foolish
What would
can we
you
get?
what would you use?
Sorry?
What would you
Oh, it's very
recommend we use?
simple. What a professional banker use? Your debt service ratio and your interest coverage ratio. If you go and ask anybody in the Ministry of Finance, what is your interest coverage ratio? They don't know. The definition of bankruptcy is very simple. If you have to borrow money to pay interest, something is wrong with you. You should not be in existence. And we are long past our capacity to repay our debt, long past. And that is where the bubble all around the world is blowing up further and
But
further. Go on. Sorry.
but in Trinidad, where
Yes.
99% of the economy was built on oil and gas and left as oil and gas, our gross domestic product is an indicator of who we are. Because our gross domestic product is one thing.
Right.
So here,
But
ironically,
no, no.
here, it would
Yeah.
make sense.
Mhm. For the GDP, how much of
Ironically,
that? Okay. If you look at the composition of GDP, and it'll be good to get the economists and let us maybe we've reached a juncture. Let's see how you calculate GDP. GDP, your formula is very simple. Your formula is expenditure of government, it's expenditure of corporate, it's expenditure of the households. When you add up all those expenditures, plus or minus what you export, I'm asking you, when does expenditure equal production? I could spend a lot of money digging a hole. I could spend a lot of money covering it up, and that's what government does. When does expenditure equal production? Gross domestic product. The other problem with gross domestic product, I think this is important that people examine it and see if I make sense. Gross, you do not take away depreciation. In other words, Guam is a typical example. You know that was phosphate. The whole island was phosphate. They used up the phosphate and they reached a stage, they spent out, they got a lot of money, they spent it out. But whenever they were measuring GDP, they never extracted the depreciation of the assets that they had. So the last year they had a huge amount of GDP and next year none because you've used it out. So therefore you have to look at how we calculate GDP, and there are other ways to look at how well a country is doing. And a very good example is if you look at Bhutan, if you look at, there was this past gentleman who, Joseph, Mike, he got his, he won his Nobel Prize. He himself said that the GDP figure, it is a farce. It is a sham number. Let us look at other ways. And the French president hired him to look at other ways of calculating how well this country is doing economically. So this is a problem. I call out all the economists. Come and tell us how you calculate GDP and what is the use of it, and how does, very important question, how does the debt to GDP ratio determine the borrowing capacity of a country? Venezuela
Especially
debt,
if, go ahead.
sorry,
Now, I was going to
GDP
ask
debt to
you,
GDP.
public funds. If the use of public funds is being used as a measure against government debt, that does not add up, and I agree with that.
Well, thank you very much. And do you know the debt? They understated. The debt does not include, when you go to the bank and they say, Philip, give me your balance sheet and show me all your debt. Do you tell them only what you owe the other banks? You have to say you're doing a construction. All your payables have to be included there. In that number, we do not include our payables in the debt. I've written articles on this challenging the economists. That's why we're in so much a mess in Trinidad and Tobago. We are not getting good advice. And if we had used the interest coverage ratio for years, it would show up in Parliament to say, guys, we can't even cover our interest. Then why are you borrowing more? But World Bank, IMF, they look at debt to GDP ratio. IMF said once you're at 40%, you're okay. If you're above that, you're in trouble. The last time the gentleman from Republic Bank, he was saying, and he came out on papers and said that, look, he's not worried. At 60, 70%, he's not worried. When it reaches 80%. So in other words, he's saying Trinidad and Tobago could borrow another $30 billion and it's okay for him. But when you as an individual go, he checks your debt service ratio. He say how much do you earn, how much what expenditures you make that you have to make to live, and how much surplus is available to service your debt. Why do the bankers now take off the thinking cap when dealing with governments? That's why one by one the governments in this world, they're falling over the cliff. They're falling over the cliff. And we like food. That the point I was making originally is that we as individuals have the capacity to think. If we do not have the capacity to think, then we should surrender to somebody who has the capacity to think and enslaves ourselves once again. Don't pretend to be free when your mind is shackled. A simple point I'm making, and I'm very disturbed that we pat ourselves on the back saying we have a high literacy rate and so on. That is not correct. You go and ask any economist, please explain to me, sir, how does the debt to GDP allow us to determine how much we can borrow, how much we can lend to a country? Ask them that question. Nowhere in the literature you will find it. But literature is not, it's somebody's ideas of reality, but it's not static. It changes all the time. How you view the world, Einstein theory, and people are challenging these all the time. It's evolving. We don't have perfect knowledge of anything.
Ben, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
What would be the sense of redeveloping the economy if we have no protections in place to protect the treasury and if our entire system of government is corrupt? What would be the point of finding new ways to earn money if you're only going to continue funneling funds to the criminals and the white collar community?
That is why I said there comes a time there comes a time when the economy is in such shambles that people are looking for leadership. How do we survive and start to grow again? Now, if the economy, that means to say government, um, is really out of pocket now, and they're highly out of pocket. What they are able to perhaps to share, or willingly or unwillingly, or is what they are borrowing. At some point in time, all the lenders are going to say that enough is enough, and we're not going to lend you anymore. And I'm saying when money is floating around, it's very difficult to make changes. But when things are, as we are now bankrupt, we are three bankrupt entities in the top bank, the three entities being the government, the private sector, and the oil. I'll put the oil sector as one as well. So we are three blind bankrupt persons in a tub, and that's where we are. Now you can say, okay, like Kobos, perhaps we still have some value. You can also say that where the 1% now because becomes 1% of 1%, and the rest is 99.99%, and societies exist like that as well, where the middle class is totally wiped out. But your question is very valid, but I'm saying the time is right for all of us look at this thing, make the sacrifices, and protect what we earn. Protect what we earn. Why can't we protect what we earn? If 1% of 1%, you are saying that the rest can't have some influence on it, and we cannot preserve and protect what we now earn. Something is wrong, and that's why I say we need to start. We can start at different levels. One, we are starting with a clean slate. What the prime minister has put together, believe me, they are in such deep waters they cannot swim anymore. They cannot. So we are going to waste 5 weeks, 8 weeks. We are going to waste those very precious time where this country should get together with serious people, not what I would call washed out economists. We don't want to hear don't want to hear the old school thought with regards to solution to our problems. And we have a very exciting future ahead of us. You get back into agriculture, get back into agro processing, you get back into recycling, you get back into alternate energy, and it's very exciting. You get back into local tourism, and you get back. You put together a plan of action that is within the grasp of the common person, including myself, within our grasp, and preserve it. Why can't we start back the sugarcane industry tomorrow? I had mentioned it yesterday. We can supply the sweet molasses to Angostura. If they don't want to buy it, we can set up a small alcohol rum factory. We can do that. I don't agree it's a necessary evil perhaps, but at least we can do that. And when we can drown our sorrows in our own production, we can start planting tobacco. Do you know how much, what percentage? This country is being raped. We are being slaughtered by Whitco, the great sponsor of athletics in Trinidad. The kind of, I think, 200 to 300% return on equity every year, despite all the taxes that they pay. So I'm saying there's too many things to do. Let's get started to do it. And the other things with regards to investigation and so on, do it on the side.
Yeah, but when you say
So
let's, yeah, man, you say let's.
Yes,
There are so many steps before we get to let's. You talk about proportional representation. Timothy Hammersmith beating that drum a decade now. And it's
I
one
don't
thing
know.
that we all,
No, I don't know what is his structure
former,
for. Uh,
former Senate President Timothy Hammersmith, and I could
yes,
get it forwarded, I could put you in touch with him and he will show you. He have all of the details for the proportional representation because his position is a third of the country is not represented in the parliament and they're not represented at the polls. And it is not a
no,
lie, and it lines up with what you just said.
it's fifty
But
percent, more than 50% not represented, not 30%. The,
no
the
problem.
our structure is such, Philip, that the opposition has no say. They have no
Sir,
say.
I had the opposition on. I asked the opposition the same questions. Who convened the parliament? They said we don't have the authority. I said, but what's the point of the opposition then? If
But
you can't
thank you
stop
very
the
much.
government, you can't challenge the
Well,
government, what's your role?
you're
What's the point?
you are just agreeing with me. You're just agreeing with me. It's
Boss,
winner take all, and the rest
the
is just a shout and an
proportion.
expense.
Eric
Go-
Williams said proportional representation is the death knell of the PNM. He was not a fool, he knows. Proportional representation will destroy the PNM. Right now, the PNM uses the treasury and the state machinery, corrupt media to divide and conquer. They are
Well,
minority government in office right now, running the country by press conference.
I don't disagree with you. Those are the facts. But I'm saying we ought to change. But let us see where we would like to go and how we
How?
go there.
No,
But
how? How do we get proportional representation? How do we get these laws? The only way, this is what Robert Amar and I have been talking on the radio for years. The only way to fix the country is to get control of the parliament through election, through lawful election to office. So that is going to require the actual public who sits down and eats popcorn and makes memes and like to get involved in bacchanal and share jokes to actually take their country seriously, take their politics seriously, take their responsibility to their democracy seriously, because the constitution cannot be changed from outside.
I agree. But the times have changed, and
Tell me.
the lessons I learned from Marx is that a lot depends on the state of economy that will drive everything else. And I'm saying we are rock bottom at the present time. We are rock bottom. So we have two choices. Is it either we pick ourselves up and start recreating the structures that feel will serve us, or as the prime minister said, we become a total failed state where we have to gather bow and arrows and so on again to protect ourselves. Because could you imagine? Just imagine for a moment that a tsunami has wiped the state, the slate clean in Trinidad and Tobago, and we had nothing before that we can say, my goodness, let us start rebuilding again. We had nothing. We have nothing. Oil industry, you have to pay somebody $35 US dollars to take my barrel of oil. What madness have we reached? So I'm saying we have an opportunity now because there's no cash flow in this system anymore. So we have an opportunity to start a design and rebuild.
Are you
Sorry.
not saying, are you just stopping short of saying that we need the government and the state and the economy to collapse for Trinidadians to realize that Trinidad needs to rebuild? Are you saying that we don't have the ability to vote into office a government capable of ending the corruption, the drug trafficking, the narco state, a government that has a vision for constitutional reform, not just the two words constitutional and reform, but telling you what actually needs reforming? Are you saying
There
that
are
we are
two,
incapable?
there are two things you are asking me, right? The first is the first is that when the Trinidadian economy and the institutions and so on collapse, it has already happened. Open your eyes and you will see it has already happened. The second point, I am not saying that is an impossibility. I'm saying precisely that is where we have to go. Precisely where we have to go. And any party that comes to the country today and say, look, we are going to do A, B, and C, including the creation of a proportional representation, at least in the Senate, at least in the Senate, will have an advantage in the next election. It will. Look, this economic crash is a major equalizer, you know. It's a major equalizer. We are just in this, just a few weeks. I'm telling you, it is going to get so bad. You don't have to believe me. We don't have to wait long to see. But by and large, this economy has crashed because we have crashed about 5 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, because of we have crashed. What has happened that kept us going was the recklessness of the bank that kept pumping money in Trinidad and Tobago.
Trinidadians believe that you have two options: the government serves you or you riot. I look at the news feed and I listen to the radio and I read the comments of educated people. We spend $5 billion a year educating 200,000 people at a time. 20,000 per year comes into our education system. 20,000 sits the failed child abusing SCA exam every year. So we know there are at least 200,000 people being fed education in this country. And I look at their responses in a world where the average person has a phone in their hand that could access more information than at any other time in our history. And our people are still prepared to talk trap nonsense. If the government helping me, I clap like a fool. If the government not helping me, who rioting with me? Let me burn some tires. If I get CNC3 to come down and film me and I make enough noise, I might get my thing dealt with.
Well, it's
How do you
management.
get that level? How do
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
boss, the question
It's
is,
what we have been experiencing, and will experience it a lot more. And I wrote this 5 years ago. You're going to see the existence of greater amount of fires in businesses and so on. So we are witnessing that at a very rapid scale, and we have to say, okay, how do we really change this? And it has to be with a particular plan, with an exam and management. You cannot implement austerity measures without being an exemplar. I'll give you one example. The cabinet in India has taken a 30% cut. You know, nobody pressured them to do it. Nobody do it. So any austerity measure with a plan of action to improve things going along, that is what is a big void in Trinidad today. If somebody could come up with that and communicate with society, I think the society will listen. But in the meantime, they're saying, give us something to eat, at least give us a little work so that we can eat. And we need to now level the playing field in the sense that we can no longer afford a society with 1% holding 90% of the assets, and the
you keep
90%.
saying, you keep
Well,
making a
I am.
statement, and I have to ask you every time. When you say
Yes,
we need, there are 100 million words missing. Because I used to say we need to find the person responsible for destroying the DNA evidence that protected the people that raped and murdered Akil Chambers. And I
that
said we
no
needed,
hold.
and the reason that as an example is that's one of the reasons we have a political party. We need to get involved and solve the problem of how long it takes for an ambulance to get to people who are in need of an ambulance. That's why there is a progressive empowerment party. Boss, when you say we need, there is a gap. What do you see in that gap representing the we that accomplishing this need? What?
Okay.
Who?
Let me, okay, hold on. First of all, there's a major problem. You have to understand what's the trend that is happening today. What is the state of affairs and what's the trend? Where, if not attended to, where will we be in 6 months, 12 months time? And this is where the people with ideas have to come out and be open with these things and be fearless with regards to their ideas. And the question now is whether that can, whether the question of now is one of execution. Ideas get a buy-in, and then it's a question of execution. I
Get
am
by.
saying Without
Get a
that,
buy,
you
get a
must get a
buy-in.
buy.
What do you
Yes.
mean? Explain that. Explain that to
Okay.
the people looking onto this thing who is buying from you wholesale. That this simple Ved Siraram appeared on my video last night and he looked like the next person to come along to cut me meat, chew it for me and give me. So I want to make sure that you explain it to them who watching you as a next savior. Explain to them that this is not you, that this is them. That if they don't wake up and get involved in the actual execution of change that is required to rescue this country, you and me could talk for the next 1,000 years, nothing changing.
Okay. The conditions that exist now, a drowning man will clutch at straws, and we have reached that stage now. What has been happening, and if you notice, the government has virtually surrendered. They don't know what to do anymore. And people now, they might have food today, may not have it tomorrow. They'll be willing to listen to ideas. They'll be willing to listen to ideas if some kind of plan is brought to them and to say, okay, this is the kind of things that can be done. And leadership starts from there, our followers start from there. But there must be a plan of action within the context of our present situation. What is your plan of action? You already have a platform. I've been doing this thing individually. I recognize, I mean, otherwise I would have given up a long time, because 20
Me
years
too.
I've been doing. No,
Hey,
but I
any
believe
who
in
have
it.
love for this country, anybody who have love for this country that's still fighting this, despite the actions and the attitude of rank and file Trinbagonians, anybody who still stands for this country in the face of all of that should pass purgatory straight and go straight to heaven.
Well, I don't want to think so far. I have a 10 years again. But I'm saying I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop talking about it. You know the truth. Let me tell you something about the truth. The truth goes through three stages. One of ridicule. People say, oh, foolish, they don't get ready. When it starts to take traction, then it goes through one of fear and anger. People are angry with you. And that is what happens now, that when you throw out some ideas that people recognize, wait a minute, that although I didn't believe in it at first, it makes a lot of sense, but I still don't like it, but they will object to it. And then the third phase evolution of truth is full-blown acceptance, full-blown acceptance. And you have to keep, life is an individual journey, at the end of the day, life is an individual journey. It is what you want to do. What are your personal objectives in life, and how do you wish to serve humanity? It is not under your control whether society agrees with you or not, or whether they come and follow you or not. It is not. That is outside of your control. The only thing is within your control. Only thing
Agreed.
within your control is what effort you are prepared to do
Agreed.
to.
Absolutely.
Right, right. So
So,
don't look at it as a failure
so
if nobody is listening. Sorry,
I don't
go ahead.
like that. We did. Look at where we are tonight, boss. I am living in a world of Sundays. Every day is Sunday since this quarantine. I could be relaxing. We doing the show 8 o'clock every night, and we pushing hard. I don't give up. Somebody tell me I like a pit bull. When I bite on something, I don't let go till it bleed. So I'll ask you a question now. I'll put you on the same spot you just put everybody on. So that the people have woken up. They've bought into the idea that change is possible, that we have to move away from the old if we're going to rebuild the new. The opportunity presents itself. We are in office and you are handed the role of Minister of Finance. What is your first action?
Well, and this is just generic. Any good experienced person, you have to do an audit of your state of affairs, financial state of affairs. You do an audit on that, right? You're going to find a bankrupt treasury. You're going to find a bankrupt treasury. You're going to find a huge list of creditors that you have to pay that you have not paid. You're going to find the whole gamut of the credit of the unions clamoring for increased wages. You're going to find a long list of bank debt, both local and foreign. That's what you're going to find. And then you're also going to find a huge commitment for your recurrent expenditure. So this is not an easy task to do. This is not an easy task. So, among all of those negatives, you have to say, what is my survival strategy going forward? What is my survival strategy? And each of those components you have to manage. But in managing that, you have to draft out a plan of action, a plan of action that to restructure this economy, restructure because you have to drop the number of employees in central government, but you have to give them opportunities on the other hand to be employed. And when you restructure the economy, you have a huge opportunity of getting the agricultural sector going. Those are the real sectors. Those are the real sectors where you produce things, where you make things, where you grow things. Those are the real sectors. We have an artificial economy that depended on surpluses from the oil sector that has disappeared. We have an artificial economy that depended upon the borrowings, the sale of assets. We have nothing left to sell except I think Heritage is trying to sell some old buildings now. So if we have no assets to sell, we have to work with what we have. But you have to lead by example. And if when I say example, you'll have to take a pay cut throughout the civil service, throughout. You have to ask the corporate to please cut your salaries at the highest of levels. All the state enterprises, cut at 20, 30% of the senior management. Cut because you do not have the money to support it. Do you know just now the banks might come to the government and say, look, I want a bailout. What are you going to do? So I'm saying you're going to inherit a broken system. You have to develop a plan. You have to also develop a plan for employment, and you have to lead by example by cutting your own salaries. A 30% cut is not unusual. Cut it and say we are prepared. We, meaning to say the leaders, are prepared to make the sacrifice to go forward. Those will be my recommendations. You cannot walk there now and say how much more we could borrow, boy. How long that will take again?
Oh,
Carry us a month.
the reason
Sorry.
I ask you that, the reason I answer that question is there are people who still on the trend, who coming on the trend and saying, hey, save all that talk. Tell me how we're going to diversify. There are people who don't understand the size of the storm that we're in. They
No, but
just don't. They don't understand that they feel now that there is a switch somewhere that we could flick and money going to come in and this as usual going to happen.
no, it's not going to happen. Believe me, it's not going. We're going to waste money with this last committee. We're going to waste committee. I can't blame the government because you cannot give a guy with a bicycle license to fly a 747. And that is the nature of the condition at this stage. Under normal circumstances, anybody could govern Trinidad. Money is coming in and money goes out. Money coming in. Right now, we're in a crisis situation. I've been saying this for the last 5 years. How come I could have seen it before, 5 years ago? How come? How come am I the only one who has survived the 1980s recession? All these old guys around the place, Selby Wilson, Dukaran, all these fellas have passed through there with wounds, and they've forgotten the lesson that we learned. That you now come and say, "My God, this is a big task to do." This should not be a big task for them. They should have rehearsed. People at the university should have rehearsed diversification. And soon as the prime minister asked, "What is my plan?" they should have pulled it out and say, "Here, sir."
I told the
Philip,
nation
I
at the
came
start
prepared.
of Corona,
I came
I
prepared to talk
no, no, you're
diversification.
gonna go through this. I tell
Um,
you something. I told the nation at the start of coronavirus that the Ministry of Health, the ODPM, even law enforcement should have been modeling for these things. This is not the first, won't be the last. We've been down this road before. But for Trinidad and Tobago, every new heavy downpour of rain is a surprise, and it is like the first time we're encountering that. So we've been down this road in the 80s of the global recession that the coronavirus is set to mimic. Add to that the collapse in oil, because any fool was going to tell you that the oil industry is predicated on consumption and global consumption is down to a infinitesimally small percentage of itself. Planes are not flying, ships are not sailing, boats, cars. We've stopped there. The major consumers of oil and gas are stopped.
That is correct. But a very
So we were
important point
always
to
going to end up a glut. We were always going to end up in a glut, and a glut was always going to drive the price down at a time when they're trying to destroy the shale oil revolution in the United States. All of this is just coming together as one big cluster. We are staring down the double barrel of the fallout from coronavirus and the collapse of big oil and oil prices. We will never get past this if we don't wake up to the reality that how Trinidad and Tobago is set up to function cannot continue.
one of the problems, big problems I saw, and I've went to many seminars and listened to the prominent economists and so on, and and country planners, and quite frankly, they don't understand what diversification is. If you don't understand what it is, how can you design a plan to diversify? They were saying diversification, and this was a common mistake, is if the oil sector declines, let us look towards the export manufacturing sector, not recognizing the fact that the export manufacturing sector depended upon subsidies, which depended on surpluses from the oil and gas. So that's why yesterday I told you all that we have one tank. That one tank has disappeared. So we have nothing left. Government have nothing left to sell. China, I don't know what China wants in Trinidad to say. China could come in and say, okay, look, I will give you X amount of
Selling
dollars.
billables.
And
They're selling our billables. They want to sell TNTech, they want to sell WASA, they want to sell billables. The 1% interested in cash flow. There are people in this country who need the movement of money. It takes us back
yeah,
to what we started the conversation about. Um, the truth of the matter is, to talk diversification tonight is to just give ideas to intellectually bankrupt people to parrot that they cannot execute at this juncture. Is that true?
uh, no, no, no. I look at
I think we're having some
it.
technical difficulty. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
That
we had some technical
we,
difficulty. Come back,
yeah,
we start over.
yeah. I don't disagree with your point, but my main objective is really to tell the nation that we do have possibilities of rescuing this country. And the only way to rescue this country is by A, B, C, D, and E. In other words, let's not debate other things. You've debated that for 40 years and nothing has come out of it because they are not proper solutions. Why do you think they never did it? Because they are not proper solutions. We have to go back to feed ourselves. What's wrong with that objective? We are seeing the dangers. We don't know how post COVID 19, how this world economy will be restructured. We do not know. But we can easily agree if we ask this whole country, should we pursue self-sufficiency in food? Apart from 1 or 2%, they might say no. But by and large, I think that is an objective all this country will share. So, what is the next step? How do we do that? There should be no lockdown on the farming community. Zero lockdown. And all that money they're getting to pump it into with farmers. And second, you make sure that every citizen in Trinidad do not go to sleep with a hungry belly. Those are the two things. And put farmers on priority. Now, this is a big quantum leap, because all the time they were town centric. All our planners are town centric. They don't understand farming. And farming at three levels: one at your household, one at the major farms, the lands, the open land, and third is urban farming. So how do we get those things going? With that structure, government has to guarantee a market for the produce. They guarantee the market for the produce. In other words, I'm going to take all that you produce. It doesn't matter what, even if I have to throw it away.
Then the Progressive Empowerment Party, you're actually reading from our manifesto. That's exactly what we say. We're actually
And
talking about land available. So I'm saying to you that you're correct, that you're spot on, and that to the newcomers who coming to this video for the first time, that hearing this for the first time, because the first day the government called a press conference, I said, convene a meeting with the farmers. They are going to be the
the
most important people in this country.
Exactly. And with the farmers now, you have short-term crops. I didn't realize short-term is just 6 weeks, for corn. Do you know whole civilizations depended on corn? All the Aztecs and all the Mexican, whole civilization on corn. And you saying we can't grow corn here? Whoever say, whatever plans you come up with, we want the technicians to tell us how to do it. We don't want a list of why it cannot be done. Anybody who says it cannot be done, send them on sabbatical. Send them on sabbatical. You want people. That's my training. That's my training, Philip. Get things done. Just get it done. And I think the time is right. I think I don't know. You could. I believe the country is willing to listen. They are willing to listen. Suppose we come up with a plan. Everyone plant maybe some kind of uh, tree in their yard. In a few years' time, we'll all have what you call breadfruit. Let's do it.
Breadfruit,
Let's do
avocado, guava. Those
that
four.
growth.
Guava is 5 vitamin C about orange. Breadfruit is the only low glycemic starch. It stabilizes your sugar, unlike wheat, English potato, and the rest. Soursop is a natural cancer fighter. Avocado is the only natural fat that is good for your system. I mean, there are lists of other things that we can grow. Those are trees, mangoes. If you grow a mango tree in your yard, you know that. You don't have to talk to a mango tree, you don't have to water it. So
No.
getting people back to growing food. I grew up with an avocado tree, a breadfruit tree, a mango tree, a lime tree. Now everybody have frangipani and hedge.
So let's design that plan and educate. Suppose every billboard in Trinidad, you are seeing only advertisement for agriculture. Wouldn't that wouldn't that prevent a sort of a different create a different psyche with regards to agriculture? Suppose we put up programs on television dedicated towards agriculture. You don't see that will going to create, you know, advertisements and television shows and so on could influence the people a lot. Could influence the people a lot. In France, they have taken away telephones from school children because of the distraction. So all this discipline has to follow with it. Suppose every time a child opens um, his telephone, that he sees something on agriculture instead of seeing other things that are very destructive. I'm saying we can do it, Philip. We can do it. It's not a question we can do it, We have to do
And,
it. That's the
and we have
difference.
to do it. We could
We
do
have
it, and
to.
I know that we have. And we've been breaking it down for people to show them how exactly we would save the water with the existing infrastructure and repurpose and send it to the reservoir. There are ways and means to fix and solve every problem, and the kind of technocrat information that you bring to the conversation is exactly the purpose of the show. So that people see that there are other great critical minds in this country that not only are capable of getting the job done, but willing to get the job done. You brought up the subject just now about doing it at a pay cut. Anybody trying to get into office now must know that you're going in there at a lean time, so that government should be working on the equivalent of minimum wage. You need people who are willing to serve this country for nothing or close to nothing. That's who you ought to vote for. This government, this over bloated cabinet, the opposition, the president, I've not heard one of them volunteer. The Senate, I have not heard one of them say, you know what, put my salary towards fighting coronavirus. They don't care. They don't care. At the end of the month, their salary sure, they're eating well, they're driving, well, I mean, there's no traffic for them to drive through with blue lights anymore. But that's what they get into office for, the perks and the benefits. And we keep voting that nonsense. And that's why we end up to here. But it is very refreshing to hear words come out your mouth that I have been saying for literal years. I have been doing this show by myself every night and talking these things to Trinidad and Tobago every single night. And it is refreshing to hear it from you, another voice, so that they know that it is reinforced. And I want to say that there has to be a way forward for Trinidad and Tobago where someone like you has a role to play. If not, where are we going as a country?
Philip, I look at this at very exciting times. because we'll get away from artificial living, we'll get away from lazy living, we'll get away from stressful living, because modern society is very, very stressful. And if we can move away from that, many persons from Wall Street, they go on and buy a farm somewhere in the backwoods in the United States, and living a very different life. But we have to move away, and suppose we now start to say agriculture as being number one. Those are the guys we are going to give prizes to when they come up with innovative ideas, and we do not have to reinvent the wheel. I have a friend, Dennis. I don't know if you know him. Is Dennis Ramadin? Ramdahin, sorry, and he's developed a system. He works with India to develop zero cost farming, meaning to say you don't have to buy an ounce of fertilizer, and by having two cows, you can cultivate several acres of land and creating your own organic fruits and vegetables. So I'm saying we have a lot of people who are willing to work, not for exorbitant fees, but to get things going in Trinidad and Tobago. I developed a whole program for the sugarcane industry, and I was the only one, although other people were scoffing at it, saying why should we produce sugar when it's easier to buy? And I asked the question: when you run out of foreign exchange, what are you going to give for the sugar? Are you going to
Who
IMF and say, guys, sorry, go ahead, go
to
ahead.
finish? I wanted to mention, who do you ask it to? Because the people that you're asking that question to have been have been broken in their minds, and they're not capable of thinking through the point that you're asking.
Well, I'm asking a question again because our foreign exchange is going to run out as it did in the late 1980s. It ran out and we were begging for money all over. But just could you just imagine for a moment, you go to IMF and say, guys, we want a 50 million US dollars. What for, sir? To buy sugar and salt? Do you know we can make salt in Trinidad and Tobago? In the islands, they used to make salt. So why don't we go back to basic things where we can be independent, where we can be self-sufficient? Israel is in the middle of a desert. They are self-sufficient in food. Are you saying we cannot ask all these people for help? And they'll be willing to give you help rather than give you money for you to throw away. So if we develop a plan, you have to come to the people with a plan of action from day one. This is what you're going to do. You've inherited a wrecked Volkswagen, and this is how you're going to fix it, and this is how you're going to survive. And for Trinidad and Tobago, I am looking at it very positively that we can actually make a society in Trinidad where we can all be proud of at all levels. Just imagine the education. How much money are we spending to protect ourselves from ourselves? Protect ourselves from ourselves. Does the government list out in terms of expenditure how much money they spend on security? In other words, not just what you spend on police and not what you spend on the army, but how much you spend within the other ministries to buy cameras, to put in install burglar proofing, and no, those questions are not being asked in Parliament. So we have to repackage how we present our income and expenditure to the population of Trinidad and Tobago. Why do we have so many embassies abroad? We closed down one, we put one in Bahrain, we put one. I'm sorry, that's for
Sid,
family
Ram,
entertainment.
for the people who
So,
just heard Vince say that, who did not hear that the Progressive Empowerment Party said recall all ambassadors and high commissioners and return five: United Nations, Europe, Asia, Africa, the Americas. Five, and they have two jobs: sell Trinidad and Tobago to the world and to bring foreign direct investment in all manner of disciplines and industries outside of the petroleum sector. Ved, we are on the exact same page. We're singing from the exact same hymnal. Everything that you've said so far tonight is as close to a Progressive Empowerment Party policy as it could be. So I want to tell you something. We have a lot of conversations to have. Tomorrow we're doing a show here with farmers, and Dana Suku, head of the Farmers Association. We have and a farmer, a big farmer. On Thursday, I have Gavin Hira, Commander Hira, to discuss policing and national security. I don't know what you're doing on Friday. Satish Ramsaran will get in touch with you. I'm putting together a panel of thinkers for Friday. And if you want to jump in that fray and get into that crosstalk, it would be nice having you back.
Well,
Take as much
if
time as you need right now for your closing comments and go.
if the lockdown is lifted, then I would not be available on Friday.
Yo, drink it. Take as much
No, no,
as you need.
I haven't started. Thank God. Thank God I haven't started. I would have been a bad drinker. No, I'm glad for the opportunity to air my views. Um, I think there are lots of fine minds in Trinidad and Tobago that has not been corrupted by huge amount of money, that have not been corrupted by um, large amount of assets, and I think you can rely on a lot of persons to put together a comprehensive plan, and I think the population now is really looking for something that would attract their imagination. That is one. And secondly, give them a route to survival. Because by and large, I don't think people are born criminals. Um, as- Maybe on few occasions, but by and large, people want to live a good life. But you cannot live a good life if there is no hope. And you need to develop all these ideas and put people back to work. And the disparity of earnings in Trinidad must be leveled. You cannot, and I think a maximum wage for Trinidad. Who don't want to live under those systems? Please leave. Please leave. Let us put a maximum wage. Why should one family be earning $2 and $3 million? And for doing what? For engaging in perhaps corrupt practices, and worse yet, wasting the taxpayers' money. So let us put a cap on wages, and that's the deal. A cap on things like what has corrupted the banking sector is the bonus system. You don't need a bonus system. They talk about innovation. Another day we can deal with that. But the only innovation is to get around taxes. That's the only innovation. Is that something? And they boast about it, that they are innovative. So I'm saying, let us put some limits so that we reduce the disparity in society. When you reduce the disparity, you would not find the level of criminality as we enjoy now. And the other area, of course, is that the question of corruption and so on that has to be dealt with. And I feel that if there's hope in society, most persons will want to be productively and legally employed. Um, I, I I cannot stop hoping for a better society, because otherwise it doesn't make sense being a hummingbird and just sipping the nectar of all the flowers and fleeing at the first sign of rain. We have to bury ourselves in the society, whichever society you live, even if you migrate, and be part of it in different ways. Some persons are more vocal, other persons are perhaps intellectual and share their ideas. I think both can be melded together to bring about, I would say, constructive change in a society.
Boss, I have smiled all of last night, all of tonight, for one reason. And it's like I heard this joke about a pastor who took a day off from preaching and went to play golf. And the first ball he God made the ball go all the way to the hole and drop in the hole, what they call an eagle. And and the fella looked around and there was nobody to see. And that is like, because that was God's punishing him, because everybody who would have normally seen the shot was in
Mhm.
church where he was. Listening to you speak about these like a confirmation that it is the correct, that we've been on the correct track from the very start. I mean, the Progressive Empowerment Party's policy for food production, if you read it, you will think that it came out of whatever document you walked with to talk diversification, just listening to you talk. And based on consumption data, we plan and we support and we execute. And everything that you said, is what we've been saying. Sean Sunarine is the deputy chair of this party. Sean Sunarine heads up mobilization together with Shari Wilson, Michelle Davis, and Glenn Robinson from Tobago. And Sean Sunarine's responsibility is to have meetings every week in all our 5 offices throughout this country to actually evangelize and teach people these policies. All our videos, all our shows, Felicia Hola is the chairman of the party. She does pep talks in the morning, every morning between 8 and 10, and has members and caretakers, constituency caretakers, come on board to again talk about these policies. Anthony Defoe, he's a deputy political leader. He does a weekend rap and he talks about these policies and everything. And I'm saying to you, we've been working hard prior to this happening here. There are people who say that everything that the government has implemented so far has been, did we lose him, Satish? I think we lost Ved. I don't know. Or have we lost the whole broadcast? Are we live still?
Yeah, we're back on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you.
Okay, great.
So we had a little technical difficulty there. Ved, I just want to say to you, thanks a lot. We have a lot to talk about. I'd like you on the panel on Friday to meet some other thinkers like yourself. And one of the points that you raised earlier is so spot on, that we need to get all of the thinking people together, the people who want a better Trinidad and Tobago, without there being remuneration for it, that it mustn't be at a cost to the state. It mustn't be for self-enrichment and pride and look at me. We have a lot to talk about. On behalf of everybody who watched the show tonight, I'd like to tell you thanks for joining us, and I look forward to further conversation with you, my friend.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all very much for the opportunity for expressing.
And Trinidad and Tobago, that's where we are. And I'd like to thank Satish Ramsaran for the little cameo appearance he made just now. I hope you enjoyed this show tonight. I'm not going to go on and on too much because we need to have more of these conversations, but we've built a team and we're building a strong team. And I think that all of the right people are finding their way to the Progressive Empowerment Party. And I think that if something is ordained and something is supposed to happen, I think it's going to happen. And I'm starting to feel like there is a bigger plan and a bigger hand behind everything we're doing, and I'm being guided. I'm very proud to know that the people I respect are on the same wavelength as us. It means we're doing something right. We did years of research. We did decades of research to get to where we are. Yeah, to get to where we are. And we will, God willing, put together the right team to not only rescue Trinidad and Tobago, but to redevelop it in the best interest of everybody. When we started this party, we said we were going to be the rising tide that lifts every boat. And that continues to be our mission. We are the only political party that did not deviate from our manifesto. We do not have to deviate from our vision 2020, 2030, none of that. All of the policies that we started off with are the policies we stand by now, and are the policies the government and the opposition and the other small parties are copying. There's a reason. The Progressive Empowerment Party came out of the gate with a plan, and that plan is the best plan to undo and redo the madness, 58 years of corruption, white-collar criminality, drug trafficking, money laundering that has frustrated proper operation of this blessed paradise. We could fix this. Ved Siriram said it tonight as well. We could fix this. Join us. Tomorrow we talk food production and agriculture. We have 2 people from the agriculture sector talking. Join us for that conversation. Until tomorrow, stay safe, Trinidad and Tobago.